This morning we will think about thinking. We will look inside our own minds and see what's going on. See what's going on without making any kind of a judgment, anything in favor or against what we see inside of our own minds. So that we are simply witnessing what is going on instead of becoming a part of it by calling it good or bad. And especially, and you should know the term very well by now, look at our minds without identifying with what we see. And that simply means that you no longer say I to whatever you see. You no longer say, I am angry. I am loving. You know people who say they're loving who aren't? They've identified with a mere idea inside their own minds. Think of the slight switch in seeing something inside of yourself by simply saying there's something going on inside. Now all these are principles you should have known a long time ago. Maybe it's good to remind you of them. But you look impartially, without grabbing anything, without being afraid of anything. Look how afraid you are of your mind, aren't you? See? Well, you can't even nod because you don't know it. Aren't you sometimes afraid you're going to go crazy? You already are. Aren't you? Nod your heads. And those of you out somewhere in Waterloo, Iowa, nod your heads too. And every place outside of Waterloo, Iowa. You're thinking yourself into troubles, problems, agitation. And let me tell you a fundamental error in your thinking, which by this process of looking at it without grabbing it and saying I to it, you can correct. Get ready to nod your heads again. Your mind is slanted heavily toward enemy thinking. Now, enemies, let's go into that a little bit. We're not talking about you seeing someone out there either in imagination or reality, physical reality. We're not talking about you seeing someone with a club out there ready to clobber you. That's not the kind of enemy we're talking about. An enemy is any person, any circumstance, any event, any future which seems to be opposite to what seems to be you. Therefore, the whole world is your enemy. You've enthroned yourself in your own mind as the supreme monarch of the universe. Therefore, if you're the king of the universe, the queen of the universe, everyone else must be plotting to overthrow your kingdom. How many of you suspect you might have a touch of paranoia? How many of you think it might be more than just a touch? Everyone is against me. Now look. Never mind the people in the nut house. Your home is a nut house. Your private insane asylum, and you know it, and your mind is that. This is why you have problems. Because you have so many enemies out there. Now, will you listen to me and will you accept what I'm going to say to you next, please? I can't describe to you with words the sighing relief that you'll have. You know what relief is? You know, you've had a big difficulty, it goes away, and you, oh, thank heavens that's out of the way. Now you wait for the next one because you create the next one. But anyway, I'll get rid of that man. I'll get rid of that woman. Whew, how did I ever get mixed up in the first place with him? Anyway, any kind of relief over the problem that is solved. Multiply that by 1,000 times, And you will begin to understand the relief that I'm talking about when you are not compelled to have enemies. When you can walk so freely above your own opposite creating mind, walk so freely that it is indeed indescribable. Your work then is to know in your present condition, your mind is a problem-creating and enemy-creating machine. Where something out there is out to get you, out to thwart you, out to make you grow old and feeble. See, you never thought of that as an enemy, did you? See, you don't think about anything, hardly, in the right way. You have this big bag of wants. I want, I demand, I must have. And anything that stands in opposition to it, E-N-E-M-Y. How am I going to fight the enemy? Look how much time you spend unconsciously, 99 to 9/10, plotting to outwit the foe, thinking of self-protective devices. You're all huddlers. I see you. I look at your eyes. I look at you trying to catch my eye. Little weak little rabbits. You're huddling. You're scared. How can I get a little bit of approval by Vernon looking at me and nodding at me? Look, but if you do that, you have to do it 5 minutes again later, right? How about that for a little bit of careful investigation? Seeing how you win a little, what you call a victory. You've defeated the foe, you've kept him at a distance just by getting the approval of someone or getting their company. You get all excited. Now things are going my way. You can never defeat the enemy. Never. You never have, you never will. What you can do is understand him out of existence so that he's not there at all. Now, if there's no enemy there, where's the battle? If there's a soldier out on the battlefield and he's the only soldier out on the battlefield who's going to fight, there's no opposition. He can drop his rifle and drop his shield. See, we've got the Middle Ages and modern weaponry mixed up. He can drop his rifle and drop his helmet. See? I correct things when I see them. Oh, that soldier is going to go crazy. He's got the rifle, he's got the helmet, he's got the grenades attached to his belt, and he's dreaming of medals, and glory, and pensions. So he proudly marches out into the battlefield and there's no one there to fight. How's he going to get medals? There's an enemy to defeat. Drives him crazy. He's put all this investment in money in it. He did. He paid taxes for that gun. So do you. And they cost money. So the soldier's out there, and he's going to have to face something dreadful, which again is the dropping of the rifle and the helmet and the hand grenade, and take his loss. He's invested all that money and all that time trying to look like a hero, and no one will let him be a hero. And he looks around for someone to fight, and he can't find anyone to fight. And he tries to incite someone to an argument. Maybe the argument will lead to fist fights and maybe bullet shooting. He can't find anyone to fight. It drives him crazy. He has a chance, though, if he can't find an enemy. If he doesn't create an enemy, right? He's going to have to go through a big loss. Oh, what a nice loss, huh? To not have to have the rifle, so you have to keep putting ammunition into it, which is expensive. He's going to have to run the risk of not getting wounded. Now, isn't that a strange way to put it? Here's a soldier, and he gets to worry that I'm not going to get wounded. I wish I could find someone to wound me. You don't know how valuable wounds are to non-spiritual soldiers, inwardly speaking. Haven't you get wounded all the time? Aren't you carrying wounds from battles of 10 years ago? Aren't they nice? Look how often you talk about them. Want to see my scars? You try to show them your metal scar. And you do show them by your manner. Look at my depression. You're proud of it. You're proud of your defeats and your D-hands. Listen to this. There is too much of you in your own life. Let's try that one again. All there is in your life is you. No wonder you're wretched. No wonder you can't stand living with yourself. Terrible, isn't it? Look, you have to get up in the morning, there you are. The next 24 hours with that? Do you know why the real reason you dislike someone and the real reason you like another human being? I'll tell you. Basically, you're really deep in a deeper psychology of it. You don't dislike a person because they're of another country, another race, because they're not as handsome or pretty as you'd like them to be. You don't dislike people for that reason at all. Not really. Not deeper. You dislike, you can think around the room, or these people right here in this room and out there too. You dislike a person really because of his thinking patterns, his wrong thinking patterns, in which he is the center of everything that happens. If he talks to you, he talks about himself openly or subtly or whatever. In other words, you dislike, this is a natural dislike. That is, you don't want to be around him because what's a little bit of rightness in you doesn't like to be around his wrongness. And that wrongness is simply too much of himself in his life. And you can spot it, can't you? You may not put it into words, but you can look and you can see how proud they are of a certain, maybe the little way they dress, they have a little button on or whatever, and the way they talk, the way they hold themselves. And there's a natural disinclination to not want that person because you know all he has is himself. That is his old nature. Now look at the other side of it. Why do you like someone? You know, a natural drawing to it. And again, right here in this class, you can see certain people that you feel a little warmer to. Let's use ordinary terms. That you like to talk with, and they don't put pressure on you, and you feel at ease with them. You're comfortable with them. How's that? Divided into being comfortable with a person or uncomfortable, right? All right, a person you're comfortable with, you're sitting and talking with them, and there's a natural sensing in you that they have escaped their own mad mind just a little bit. They're not always talking about themselves or thinking about themselves. They can put themselves in your place, for example. And you can sense this. You can sense that at least to some extent, this person is not just loaded with himself. And you don't even have to put it into psychological terms. You just know it. And there's that natural warmth. You've had this. And you look at the other person, and there's nothing you want from them in particular. You don't want to have a friendship with him, even, but you're just a stranger, and you can kind of sense the absence of full-grown egotism, being yourself, having only yourself in your life, simply being a form of egotism, in which you're always the center of everything. This is the beginning, of course, of real sanity. Sanity means to get rid of you, right? What you've assumed to be you all these years. Now let me give you an illustration that connects with everything, and it develops the theme of thinking about ourselves and less thinking about ourselves. Here's a jungle in South America, and in this jungle is a native tribe. This is the world we're talking about, right? And the natives there have ceremonies, victory ceremonies over enemies. Enemies is the crocodile that's been getting them when they go fishing. And they have tribal dances, but the main feature of their ceremonies, of their tribal dances, of their victories, of their celebrations, of their healing, is music. And the music is mad. The bongo drums banging away, and the high shrill shriek of the little native instruments. Jungle music. Mad, repetitious. Bombards the ears. This is their music, jungle music, and they use it constantly. It's a very close part of their life. One day, while they're in one of their frequent celebrations, because they have to keep this mad music going all the time, otherwise they get lonely. Otherwise they miss their madness. One day while they're having this, one of their own natives came staggering out from the jungle into the big clearing where the big mad scene was going on, dancing around the bonfire. Bong, 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 bong. And this native who came back was dazed and staggered in. And they didn't understand what was going on, of course. So they took him over and tried to question him what had happened to him out there in the jungle or what he had seen, and he wasn't able. He was incoherent. He was in such a daze. So they said, well, of course, the cure is bongo music, mad music. So they put him right in the center where the music would be the loudest in his ear. And had the musicians direct their attention, had the bongoers direct the attention to it, and sure enough, he recovered. But he didn't remember what had happened to him. So a few days later, the second occasion, the same thing happened again. Another native came staggering in, dazed, couldn't talk clearly. So they gave him the treatment of the mad music, and pretty soon he became as he always was. Happened 5 times. 5 different natives coming in, both men and women, came in, put him by the bongo music, and they recovered. But the chief of the tribe was curious. He wanted to know what was going on. So he himself decided to go out where they were. He asked them generally what direction they took, and they told him. So he himself went out all alone. And he came to the edge of the jungle. There's a big clearing beyond it. As he came to edge it, he began to hear something. Something he'd never heard before, and it disturbed him. And already he had a hint of what had happened to the 5 natives, what had dazed them, what had shocked them so badly. So he proceeded to the edge of the jungle, and he looked out, and he understood that he was in what is called civilization. There was this big city there at the edge of the jungle. And as he looked, he understood what was happening. And what was happening was an outdoor concert. There were the musicians up on the stage, well-dressed and playing their violins and pianos and trumpets. And they were playing to a large audience, outdoors. And the chief listened to this music, which was what we would commonly call pretty music, sane music, nice music, quiet music, sensible music, music that had a melody to it. Now, let me repeat that. Music that had a melody to it. So, as he listened, he went into shock. But he managed to hold himself back a little bit in order to completely understand what had happened to the other 5. And what had happened is that they had been so used to the old music. You're getting the point, I know. Hearing the old music that when sanity came along, it shocked them. They couldn't take it. They couldn't understand it. When you come here, when you read a book, and you encounter truth, of course you're shocked. It's not like you. It's unlike you. Now, you fear it and you hate it and you say this can't be right because it isn't like me. Look at the insane, quote mark, logic of the old nature, how tricky it is, how it lies. You want to become sane, this class will drive you sane. You've been living with those bongo drums and that shrieking. You know what that represents, don't you? It represents your emotions. It represents the way you react fearfully. It represents the overall clanging and noise of your life, which is you. Look, let me tell you, you don't know what silence is. You've never had it. You don't know what it means to be quiet. You are still too busy creating opposition, creating enemies. Bang, bang, bang. Every bang is an enemy, and you're afraid to be without it. No wonder when sanity, beautiful music comes along. By the way, that chief didn't tell anyone what he dimly realized. He himself went back to the bongo music. He couldn't take it. He didn't want it. You have to come back to the edge, go to the edge of the jungle time and time again. And you've had this experience. I know that some of you have had this. You've come from the mad music and you've worked your way to the jungle, to the edge, and you hear the beautiful music. Look at the hundreds, the thousands of people just in our group alone who write us nutty letters, who say vicious things, all because they sense that the music is beautiful, but it's not like me, therefore it must be wrong, therefore I must hate it and criticize it. At all costs, I have to keep me. That's the same thing as saying, at all costs, I must keep my insanity. It's all I've got. Listen to this. Don't be afraid to be happy. You do fear it because it's different from you. Your misery is the foe of happiness, isn't it? Look what you want to retain. I've already told you 1,000 times, and I'll continue more and more and more to tell you that there is something besides you. There's something besides the bongo drums and the shrill shrieks. If you will experiment, you will see this, and your fear of not being you will dissolve. Your exciting life is destroying you. Your exciting thoughts, your fear that there might be something outside of you that's going to take you away, that fear itself is insidious. How are you going to get over it? Look, why do we tell people come back again and again? Why do you do it in Los Angeles or here? You do it because you understand it's the only way. It is the only way to make the whole thing clear. Every day you should find at least one way, and 10 would be better, to deliberately walk away from your mad music inside the jungle, the mad jungle music, and start walking toward the edge of it. So that when you see, if you do this, you'll hear just a pretty little bit of music that's very faint. Why are you afraid of something simply because you've never heard it before? I know why, and you know why. The bongo drums are very strong. But look, just stay for a little while. You're not near, you can't even see the source of music yet, that outdoor music stand. You're just far enough away from the mad music, the jungle music, where you could still hear it too, but there's just a little break, a little pause. See, you're at a certain distance between the two, where the mad music still goes on, but you could just, hey, what's that? Have you ever done that? What's that? Right? Have you done that? Now stay there. Stay there. Don't run away. Are any of you nuts in this room going to run away? You're running back to madness. And you take another step. And it becomes a little clearer. You see, all this is God working. This is reality working. Coming from above and operating down on you in the jungle. And you understand, this is what you say at the start. You'll do this 1,000 times. You say, that music is not hurting me. At first you were afraid. And you want to say, that is not hurting me. Someone tells you that there's a new kind of way to live outside of your hatreds and fears. Someone tells you that, and already you're afraid because you're afraid to be without your fears, so you resist it, so you fight. All right, just stay there, ponder it. Stay where you are. Don't run. If you run back, you're sunk. People who run back too often lose the capacity to ever go out again. They're goners. And you say, something is happening that is not harmful. And what happens is you gradually lose self-reference. That is, less and less you say, nothing harmful is happening to me. You said that at the start because you're still all mixed up inside and you think the me is real. But as you go closer to the edge of the jungle where you hear the sane music, even your phraseology, your internal phraseology changes, and in wonder you say, nothing harmful, nothing bad is happening. Already that is the lessening of egotism. The lessening of feeling that you are all that there is. And the closer you get, the lesser you get. So that you finally see that the very supreme truth that you've been told many times, which you've never understood, which is really that there's no one to save. Leave that to the religious hypocrites to save themselves. Religious hypocrites maintain themselves, therefore cut themselves off from anything higher than themselves. You see what the solution really was to not think yourself into existence by having enemies at all, any kind of enemies, anything, anyone. To not recreate the self who has to have enemies. And you see that the solution is to simply see that. When there's no you, there's no opposition, right? There's no one to compete against. There's no one to worry over. There's just pure sanity, which is never and can never be my sanity. If you have my personal sanity, then you're some kind of a human being, a counselor maybe, or someone who thinks he's sane, someone who says, I possess intelligence. See, the I is there. I am sane, therefore I can teach you, or whatever. You see, there can't be the operation of the intellect at all, but only a realization of the non-existence of the self-created self, the self-glorified self. At last you understand what sanity, freedom, goodness, decency is. You see it clearly. And what it is the total absence of you as you. Then everything becomes clear. Then there is the beautiful music out there of a clear mind, of a clear spirit, which is not grasping for anything. It has it all. It's got it. It's got the whole thing. It's down there at the end of the, outside the jungle itself, into Sane. Then there is nothing to do, listen, nothing to do but live happily ever after. Why do you fear to be free? You know why. We come right back to where daily practical work is the solution, because it leads to the solution. Seeing how you are having a conversation with someone today, someone in the class, you're having a conversation and you suddenly understand that you were talking. Why did I say that? Because I wanted to be here. I'm afraid to be without me. And so you feel the urge, you've caught yourself at that, and you see the urge come up to say something about yourself, anything, as long as you say I or me. And you catch it, and the very catching of the forward surge of egotism is the beginning of the ending of its false power over you. Seeing is everything. You can do it with the other person too. Catch all these people making self-references. Catch them being emotional as an ally to self-reference and self-building. Watch how they get excited over something, and you can see the self in it. Have you ever in your life heard anything more marvelous than what you've heard this morning? Change it and say it in a different way. Do you know then, sense then, that there is nothing that is marvelous outside of the truth that we're talking about? Not that man, not that woman, not that ambition, not that daydream, not that nightmare, not that hope, not that excitement, not that career, nothing. It's all built on sand. We want to be on such solid ground that we don't ever have to think about where we are. Now you're compelled to think about it. Am I safe? How do I get to be safe? Is that person a threat? No one is a threat. Nothing is a threat. There's no one there to be threatened. But you think so. There is no one there to be hurt, to be left out, to be cheated. There's no one there to grow old. There's no one there to be competitive, on and on and on. There is no one there. The seeing of this is true religion, true spirituality. Do you want it? For the next several hours of this weekend, many hours of this weekend then, you select your own little way in which you will leave the mad music of the jungle and start walking toward the edge where you begin to hear something different. You have your responsibility to take what's been said to you and apply it individually. Look, just seeing the sickness of the people who surround you in your work, in your home, seeing the sickness of it is healthy for you, because you say there are the musicians, the mad musicians with the jungle music. There it is. I heard about it, and there it is. And there's me wanting to be a part of it. From now on, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to drive myself sane. Do it. In spite of everything. Nothing can stop you. Nothing can stop you. There is something in you. There is something in you that can go forward in spite of all the so-called enemies. When you recognize the enemies have no power at all, they're really non-existent as far as reality is concerned. When you see that, watch how your pace picks up. You start running. What we want in this class is people who are running toward the beautiful music. The more you hear of that, the less of your own insanity you hear. Now you just live. You live in freedom. And this you'll know from your own experience. Isn't it nice to know that you can live what we've talked about? We've talked about it. Now go out and live it. Now go out and be it. You can be it. And we'll take a break. There's a little daisy out in the middle of the prairie. Pretty little flower just learning to grow and to come up out of the ground. And it is storming. And the rain is pounding down. And there's thunder and there's crashes and lightning. And the wind is howling against this one little daisy poked up above the prairie floor. The whole universe seems to be against the little daisy. Look, there it is all alone out there. The whole world crashing down on it. You feel that way? Let me tell you, the illustration is 100% accurate in one way and 100% inaccurate in another way. Let's look at the accurate part. Of course, the world is allied against you growing, developing. Of course it is. This is the way it is. Because this is the way human beings are. Who do you think the howling winds are but other people? Mama and Papa. Who do you think the thunder is but society as a whole? Crashing down on the individual, threatening him. Now the little daisy sits there in the middle of the prairie, terrified. There's a difference though. If that daisy uses its nature, the nature that is built into it, it can continue to grow. And the storm can be just as fierce as it always was, but it won't affect the daisy because it can grow and become strong so there'll be no influence on it at all. We're going to talk about influence later. Now, the reason all of you here are asleep spiritually, that little daisy, is because you believe in the storm. And one of the tricks of all that world out there, all those fierce, stormy people out there, is to play a very special trick on you, little daisies. And that very special trick is to make you think that there's no need to escape the storm at all, not to conquer it in a special way. Millions of people right now, as we're seated here now, talking about the inner life, there are millions of people around the world who see no need to be here, no need to talk about these things, no need to do anything because they have learned to love the storm. It's become so natural to them, and don't you think that you're any different? How did you live today? Well, let's put it this way. To what degree was a storm crashing and thrashing inside of your mind today? So you didn't know. You didn't know that when you got up out of that chair, the breakfast chair this morning, you didn't know that you got up and walked across the room. You didn't know it because the storm had distracted you from it. See, this is your problem. You're always thinking about something. The storm is always going through your mind and you fear what's going on inside of you instead of understanding it. But you don't know what is going on. You don't see your distractions. You don't see how mad you are. You don't see it. We see it. Some can look outside of you and look at you and see where you are, that you're gone somewhere. But you don't see it. So we're going to investigate what's wrong with us tonight. I'm going to give you an illustrative story of it. Here's a big lake, enormous lake, like Lake Mead. And there's a pier. And every weekend, a group of people come down the pier, 30 people. They come down to the pier and they get on the boat. And they're dressed, respectably, casually, but respectably. And they're young people, teenage people, and there's middle-aged people, and there's older people. And they all get on the boat, all these 30 people, men and women, and they go out into the lake and start cruising around. And then they start doing a very strange thing. They reach into piles of rocks that are in the boat, and they start throwing the rocks at anyone in another boat. Start throwing rocks at picnickers along the bank and scaring the ducks that float on the water. And they throw rocks at people. Now look, stop right there. You're throwing rocks. You're allowing rocks to be thrown inside your mind when you're scared. You're doing something that is spiritually illegal. Now let's continue with our strange little love cruise, unloved cruise. This happens every weekend. All these people get on the boat, and every weekend they go out and they do the very same thing. They throw rocks at anyone or anything. There's one man on the boat who begins to wonder about it, but he doesn't change anything. He continues to join 29 other people and get on the boat out there and throw rocks at other people and at the ducks and call that a good time. Call that doing something entertaining. But listen to what happens every time they end the cruise and come back to the pier. Let's see if you can think with me on this. When they come back to the pier, there's a policeman there. And as they get off the boat onto the pier, the policeman says, "You have broken the law. You've behaved like hoodlums. You nice, respectably dressed people of all ages behaved like hoodlums, and so you're going to be fined." And so he fines them for breaking the law. So this goes on for a long, long time. They go out in the lake and they throw rocks and they come back to the pier and they get fined for it. This one man who's doing a little thinking, he finally notices something. He makes a connection, which you don't do. You're hearing a story. Make a connection, please, right while I'm talking. He makes a very interesting connection between his decreasing bank account and what he's doing. He notices that when he looks at his bank book that every weekend it's a little lower than it was before. And he wonders why he is getting poorer all the time. And he suddenly remembers. He sees cause and effect. He sees that he behaved a certain way with the rest of those hoodlums out there, throwing rocks, doing something wrong. He sees a connection between that and the fact that a policeman stops him on the pier and finds him, therefore he's a little poorer. And the next thought that comes to his mind is this, and hope for the day when you get this thought too. He had 29 friends, right? Those 29 friends out there, he now sees, begins to perceive, those 29 friends out there like him to pay a fine. His friends that he always had lunch with out there, that he talked with and laughed with, those friends are a part of his loss. And he begins to wonder at the word friendship, if maybe he's got it all wrong. And so his thinking begins to progress, and he begins to understand very clearly why he is getting poorer and poorer. It's because he's doing what he is doing. And he sees that there are no friends of his at all. So he does what you're going to have to do. The friends, so-called friends, and the who are really enemies are inside you. Perfectly logical deduction as to what he is doing and what happens to him as a result of doing that. He's getting poorer. You are getting what? Unhappier, more strained, or whatever. So one day when they all meet down at the pier, all 30 of them, to go out onto the lake and throw things, which you do. You did it all day long. You threw things all day long today. You have to think while I talk. You have to know that I'm talking about you. So he goes down the pier, one morning when the rest of them are there, and he says, "No, I'm not going out in the boat anymore because I can see what's happening to me by associating with you, by being with you, and I don't want to punish myself anymore by associating with you." Well, look, see, when you're weak and you're outnumbered 29-1, your no isn't very strong. So he said no once, and all of them said yes, so he changed his no to yes, and he went out again. And for the next several weeks, he got poorer and poorer and poorer, until it finally got through his head. He finally got it through his head that he couldn't afford it anymore. He was getting too poor for comfort. He didn't like the feeling. So finally he was able to do something which hopefully you're able to do, which is to make the no stick. So he stayed off the boat. And all those people continued to go out there. The world is going to continue to throw stones. But if you're not with them, oh, those sick friends of yours, I know you people. I know that you still have people in your life, probably most of you at least, have people in your life that you value. And you don't know that you're on their level and they are on your level, and you're getting poorer because you don't see that they are getting poorer, and therefore they don't care what happens to you because they have no sense of what's happening to them. This is why it becomes so easy after a while to let the world go and to make that no of yours an absolute shout at the top of your voice. Regardless, you know that phrase? Regardless of the consequences, I'm going to say no to everything. This is inside of you. Those 29 friends and a lot more are inside of you. And you're not seeing what they're costing you. You're not seeing what your sound asleep state is costing you. Shall I tell you what it's costing you? You won't understand this, but I have to use simple common words which don't have a lot of emotion to you because you can't see it. They're costing you life forever. See, that has no meaning to you. But I am telling you that that's what it's costing you, because you think that the kingdom of heaven consists of rock throwers who get their fun out of hurting other people. Now, they didn't call it hurting other people. They called it fun. They called it necessary. They called it something to do. While that man was foolishly on that boat with his 29 so-called friends, while he was with them, he felt very, very comfortable. You find ways where you can deliberately choose to be uncomfortable. We should just stand on the dock there and say, no, no, and watch all 29 of them get in the boat and go and leave you behind. There you're standing there all alone. Let me tell you how far you're going to have to go. You're going to have to lose everyone. All the people in this room, all your so-called friends and all your relatives, all the people who mean something to you financially, all the people who give you sex, all the people who give you companionship and you go to the movies with them. This is the old world. If you want the old world, then you have to pay the price for it. Look, here's the problem. You don't know that you're paying the price because you use words. And you're on that boat doing all these dreadful things of throwing rocks against other people, which bounce back incidentally and hit you. And you're saying, what fun. And you see the 29 other people on board with you, and you say, what security. How nice to be with friends. You take a look at your bank account, ladies and gentlemen. Now, what does that mean? It means you look and see how you really don't know what to do with your day. The compulsive duties are your saviors. They give you something with a whip that force you to do something, and you're so glad, because if it didn't force you to do something, you wouldn't know what to do. And you'd begin to feel lost. Let me tell you, you already are lost. If you're lost, every one of you here is lost. I know that. And I know that you don't understand what that means because you haven't gone that far. You won't stand on that dock and let the tears stream down your face and to shake. And at the same time, listen to this. Ah, what a scene. You're standing on the dock, trembling and crying. And they're all yelling at you, come on board, you're going to miss us, we're going to have fun. Look what we've been doing all these years on every weekend, going out there. And oh, the tears are thick, aren't they? And you stand there and shake and you scream out, no. Oh, what an experience. I would say that it has to go on for about 10,000 weekends. Till the time comes to go on with the illustration. The time comes, you don't even go down to the dock anymore. Going down to the dock means to still think about all the pleasures that you see. You're doubtful yet. Maybe it's okay. You're going to get trapped. You foolish women, you equally foolish men, yearning for those friends on board. Why don't you try something? It won't hurt you a bit. You've got the illustration. I know you have. You know what I'm talking about. Inside you know. You don't want to do it, but you know what I'm talking about. Stand on the dock and look at all those urges to get a lot of money. Just maybe with a little luck and the help of the stock exchange, I can invest it there. And at the end of the month, I'll have $30,000. No to the thrill. No to the memory. No to the companionship of your money, your bank account. You're going to have to do that many, many times. I'll tell you why. One time it's that beautiful woman, huh, gentlemen? She can talk you into anything. She can invite you to your bedroom and you go right onto the boat. I know you men, you do it, you would. Here, I'm telling you that you'll do it and you'll go ahead and do it. You'll do it! Because you're on such a very low level of understanding. Because you don't know what it means to have something of a higher value than the pleasure of that girl inviting you. And that man stands there on the boat and lures you girls out there too. He promises you a lot of things too. You don't want sex so much, but you want to be held, don't you? And you want the companionship. And you want him to be nice to you and to smile at you. Pay a lot of attention to you. My dear ladies, when that man gets you out there, he's going to throw rocks at the other people that go by, and you don't see what kind of a man he is. Look at him throwing the rocks. Look at the expression on his face. And you want to live with him. That's called hell. That's called getting trapped. That's called not having a life of your own. when you can really say no to anything or anyone, then you have a life of your own and not before. When you no longer go down to the pier and tearfully watch those 29 other people go out, when you don't even go down there, you don't even think about it anymore. You don't think about the pleasures because they're no longer pleasures to you. You see what it used to cost you. You saw how you could be taken by anyone. And you saw when you were weak, when you were weak, people could look at your face and see you were weak. And you had contempt for yourself. And you were afraid of them because they sensed your weakness and you knew they were going to take you. How many times in your experience in this mad world have you had someone make a remark of contempt to you that more or less came out of the blue? You're with a friend, you're working alongside someone, you're out socially, you're out with the girls down for dinner after work, wherever you were, those bunch of people. And of course you're nervous, and you don't know how to behave. You don't know how to behave with other people because you don't know how to behave with yourself. And all of a sudden, to your surprise, in a little ordinary conversation, back and forth, talking about general things, someone made a cutting remark to you. Ever happened? Raise your hand. All of you have had that happen to you. And you don't know why, do you? Shall I tell you why? You sense it. I'll tell you why. You shouldn't have been in there in the first place. You're still on the boat with those people who want to throw rocks, and one threw one at you. You're in danger right on that boat of them turning around and tossing one at you all the time. This is the way it is. When you're with people who make contemptuous remarks, who are rude to you, what are you doing with them? What are you doing on the boat in the first place? You want something from them, and you are also a rock thrower or you wouldn't be there. Someday, one beautiful, blessed day, you will understand why that man suddenly behaved with contempt toward you ladies. You men will understand how that hard-hearted, scheming woman, you'll understand why you associated with her in the first place. Because you are desperate people, that's why. You're so desperate and you don't know what to do, and you say, well, if I don't go out with him or her, if I don't invest the money, if I don't do that, what am I going to do with my life? There's only one way you're going to find out what to really do with your life, and you won't have to do it at all. Oh, what a relief and a pleasure that'll be to you. You stand on that pier long enough and say no, say no, say no. Oh, when you go through all the agony of it, you'll know what to do. And what you'll do, finally, is spin on your heel, turn around, and go up to the earthen end of the dock, and go on home and stay there. And you'll understand, you'll look back, you'll understand exactly why that woman made that sarcastic remark to you. Oh, it hurt, didn't it, men? It hurt, didn't it, ladies, the way that man behaved toward you. You will understand it perfectly, absolutely. And you'll understand why that word desperation was brought in the talk. You were a desperate person. You think you need the rock throwers. The only reason you think that is because you're one yourself. You get pleasure out of it, but you cover it up. You don't go out and be rude to that man or woman, that man who's going to invest your money for you. You're not rude to them. You have rudeness inside you, but you're not rude because you still want a reward. You could throw a rock at them any minute, couldn't you? You know all those people that you dislike for what they've done to you, whether it's happening right now or happened 20 years ago. Why don't you spin on your heel and go up the ramp, up the pier, and go to the end of it. Go way on, go on home, and you'll be able to look back and see exactly why everything bad, wrong, distasteful, hurtful happen to you. And when you see it, listen to this. When you see why it happened, it can never, never happen again. This is known as consciousness of stupidity. And guess whose? This is known of becoming aware of how you used to be, but at the time you didn't understand it at all. And you were the worst possible influence on yourself that you could have. You yourself were your worst possible influence, right? What you were inside of you, the rock thrower inside of you, was influencing you, and you got the results. Sometimes try to see a connection between your wrong influence on yourself and the way you feel. Those people on the boat, all 30 of them, and that one man, special man too, all those people on the boat, at the time that they're throwing rocks, they don't have a sense of loss. They can't make a connection between what they are inwardly, rock throwers, and the fact that they have to pay a fine when they check in at night, go in at night. They can't see the connection. You suffer. You are bewildered. You are gullible. And here's why. Don't miss this. You suffer, etc. Listen, because you are you. That's all there is of you, is a rock thrower who doesn't see the wrongness of it and doesn't see how your bank account goes down. That is, you're losing your life, money being representative in this illustration of something that's valuable. You're losing something that is truly valuable because you don't know what you're doing to yourself. You're sound asleep. Now, you join the rock throwers out there and you live with the rock throwers inside. I'll repeat a point of a minute ago. See a connection between what you do and what you are. And oh, what a connection. I'll tell you, you can't really separate them. What you are is what you do. Your nature, your level expresses itself in what you do. Now, what are you going to do about it? If all you are is a rock thrower and you're getting poorer every weekend as a result of throwing rocks at others and getting rocks thrown at yourself, what are you going to do about it? I told you what you could do. Let's go over it again. You do one thing. You see that you're a very, very poor human being who doesn't know what to do about it. If you know what to do about it, you're going to be conned. And you try to say no, you'll never be able to do it. You'll get out on the boat and the whole thing will continue again and you'll get poorer. You know who God helps? Are you ahead of me a little bit? I'll tell you who God helps. The helpless. You're not helpless. You've got all kind of ideas as to what is fun. Well, find out. Look, search your own mind as I'm talking to you. What are you rich with in activities? How about the false richness of being scared? How many of you are scared? You see, this is your rock throwing. It gives you an excitement. I'm scared. Try to be scared without putting an I in front of it, and you'll find it impossible. You always must say, I am terrified. I'm terrified. What should I do? You're throwing rocks at yourself. See, you're tense and you're nervous. And all that exists to you at the present time is you. And you and that terror are the same thing. Now, thank heaven for heaven. There is something outside of the boat and the rock throwers on it. That something comes, I'll repeat, you see, you're not helpless yet. You're not at all helping. You've got too many things to do. And you've got all the friends to do it with. All that fun and all that champagne out on the boat between rock throwing. You've got all sorts of things to do, including being kind of back in your mind here, being scared of the fine. Being scared of the fine when the weekend is over. Have you ever gone as far in your inner investigation to see the pleasure in your fear? Have you ever been in a situation where you sensed that it was wrong and you greatly cherished your impending doom? That is called doing something because it is being someone. And that means you are not helpless at the moment. You have got your rescue. You have your support. Don't you see the madness of it? I know what's going to happen to me next. Underline the me. I know what's going to happen. A policeman is going to come along, and I'm going to look at his badge and his uniform, and I'm going to be scared. Even when I get off the boat, I have something to feel. I can feel scared. The whole world is insanely doing this, looking forward to the next period of hell in fear. Will you right now, right tonight, drop your fear? You're going to be afraid 30 seconds after we have the break. You're going to get up and you're going to look at someone's face that you almost bumped into or did bump into and wonder whether they're going to be offended at you or not. And if they smile at you, you wonder if that's a fake putting it on and they really disliked you bumping them and knocking your pencil to the floor. Getting a little pencil mark on your pretty white dress. All right, I'll tell you how to start walking away from the pier. I want you all to do it. When I call the break, very, very soon now, I want you to know where you are at the moment I say take 10-minute break. I want you to know where your physical body is. I want you to know where your hands are, whether your legs are crossed. I simply want you to know. And I also want you to go further than that, as far as you can go, to see what's going on inside of you. Are you tense? Are you thinking 1,000 thoughts? What's going on inside of you? But most of all, do as much as you can. I could give you much more than you can take. Do the following. Either stand up, or if you stay seated, just stay seated there. But simply know what you're doing at the moment you're doing it. Simply know it. Now stick with it as long as you can. If you do it for 1 second, that's great. If you do it for 3 seconds, that's better. Don't lose yourself to your mind. That is saying no. The yes to the rock throwers is always in the intellect. And if you stay awake, if you know where you are, and you could get up, and you can walk, you can be aware of a person, you have to go to the right to go around them. Don't lose yourself to the boat. See how long you can stay awake. Maybe 1 second, 5 seconds, and eventually you'll fall asleep again. You'll start thinking. And you take this exercise with you forevermore. See how long you can know where you are instead of joining the boat. The longer, every second, to use a figure of speech, every second that you can stay awake and know where you are is 1 step away from the dock. If you do this, you'll start to walk home. And you can take 5 steps home and then you stop. Another 10 steps, then you stop because something came along. You begin thinking about whether you should go back to the boat and the fun back there. Then you come awake again, you take another 20 steps back home. Finally, you'll be back home and you'll never fall asleep again. You'll be in practical thought, but you won't be asleep. You'll never be on that boat again. Wouldn't that be a nice place to live? Wouldn't it be nice to be home? The comfort of home, wouldn't that be nice? Take a break. Come with me to the land of the sky blue waters. And I'm not going to mention the product associated with it. And how come you know what it is? Come with me to the land of the sky blue waters, in which there is an Indian village. Now, this Indian village has a very interesting name to it. It's called Indian Village. Now, in this Indian village, which is beside a great, beautiful lake, there are two tribes in the village. And listen to the interesting names of these two tribes. One tribe is called the tribe of Speedy. The other is the tribe of Freezy. Speedy and Freezy. Got it so far? Follow closely so you don't get lost in the land of the sky blue waters. Now, these two tribes were different as follows. The tribe of Freezy had about 90 people in it. Tribe of Freezy, 90 people. The tribe of Speedy had just one people, one heap big brave. Now, both of these tribes came to heap big wigwam, 4 times a moon. And they would come down in their moccasins on down to the heap big wigwam to hear lecture from Great Chief White Cloud, right? So Great Chief White Cloud would give heap big lectures to the tribe of Speedy, which consisted of just one chief, one brave, and the tribe of Freezy, which consisted of about 80 people, 80 braves and bravettes. Look, when you make it up as you go along, Now, Big Chief White Cloud would watch all his braves and bravettes as they listened to the lecture and got up afterward. And he finally understood why there was so many of the tribe of Freezy and one person in the tribe of Speedy. He finally understood it because he noticed the people as they walked inside heap big wigwam, which was not too big for the amount of braves and bravettes. Because being kind of crowded, they would kind of bump into each other and they would have to make decisions. And he finally got it, how they got their name of Freezy and one Speedy. He noticed that when the Freezies came together, one Freezy Indian, another Freezy Indian came together, so there was a narrow passage, instead of one of them making a signal, heap go left, they would both stand there and freeze. And they would stare at each other. And they would glare at each other. They would just freeze in place. He understood perfectly why they belonged to that tribe. And he'd look again in another part of the room. 2 Freezies, they just freeze and stare at each other. Neither of them would have the heap big sense to go left or right. And so he said to himself, thank heap big spirit in the sky for one Speedy. Because here's what Speedy would do. He'd be walking down the aisle just to the rest of them. But when Speedy came to a Freezy, he would say, heap left or heap right. He wouldn't freeze. And immediately the problem of a narrow passageway was solved. No hesitation in Speedy, left, right, whatever it was. Oh, he could think fast. But oh, the tribe of Freezy, they would glare at each other. They couldn't even lift their hand to go, me heap big left, you heap big right. So the big chief decided to help them. And so he said, all of you, what was it, braves and bravettes, will wake up in Heap Big Wigwam. And when you come together, you will turn into the tribe of Speedy. You will do something besides standing there and staring, wanting the other one to make the first Heap Big Wigwam signal. What do you want, a smoke signal? That just occurred to me. Wake up! Be Heap Big Braves. Don't stand and stare. Watch how Speedy does it. You may be big chiefs yourself someday. And tears flowed down the chief's eyes as he stood in his chair watching all the freezies out there. And he hoped that they would listen to Heap Big Tribal Council medicine and follow his advice, because it's a part of waking up. And that's the end of the land of the sky blue waters. Let me start by asking you some questions. How many of you are sad? You know what it means to be sad? How many of you are bewildered by life? Hands. How many of you are afraid of the future? Raise your hand. Well, we could go on all night on that, couldn't we? Well, what do you expect? I ask you if you're sad and you raise your hands. I ask you if you're depressed, confused, and don't know what life is all about, and you raise your hands. Now, how old are you? How long have you been enduring this condition? If you don't listen to what I'm going to tell you now, I'll raise my hand again 5 or 10 years from now, ask you to raise your hand, and you will, because nothing will have been changed. How do you expect to change something without changing something? How do you expect your inner nature to be different unless you follow a right, true course for changing it? You live in hope, don't you? You live in hope that something is going to come along and do something for you. It never has, and it never will. I want to tell you, you'd better listen to me, or you will get to the point where you're going to fall madly in love with all your problems, with all your difficulties. And you're going to start enjoying something that is very, very strange. You're going to find your chief pleasure, your chief enjoyment in being defeated. Which you're doing right now. Which is your condition right now as I'm talking to you. You are defeated, you know. You don't know what life is all about. You don't know what you're doing here. You even come to these classes or hear talks or read books. You absorb them, you think, and nothing changes internally. Maybe I'd better go back to basics and tell you what this is all about, why we're here in the first place. We're here because you don't have to any longer be who you've been in the past. Already you're resisting. Already there are shadows inside of you when I said that, and I know why. You have so much fun chasing around. What you call fun is simply wasting your life because you have certain standards, certain ideas as to what life is all about, and you conform to your own definition of it. How pathetic. See, all you've ever known is defeat. This is what was passed on you by your friends, by your own encounters out into the world. And you were defeated. Now let's look at the defeat. And I'll tell you what it was. Your defeat was simply the denial of something you thought you wanted, something you thought you needed. And that's what you call defeat. You'll find out, as we're talking here today, you'll find out how to rise up and revolt against loving your own disastrous defeats in life because they give you a false pleasure. And they make you the center of attention of your own life. How tragic. You understand, don't you? Or do you? You have no real good cheer in your life. You don't know what it means to have a pleasant day. I don't care about the weather, whether it was perfect and sunny and cheery skies. You don't know what it means to have a pleasant day. The weather could be beautiful out there, can't it? And it gives you a certain little natural thrill when spring first comes, and you say, what a beautiful day. You can have a beautiful day all the time. You can be cheerful all the time. You can win in a new way all the time if you'll do one thing. One thing, it's going to take you years. If you investigate why you refuse to listen to something that is higher than you. The way you're living now, you call that sacred? You call that fun? What's the matter with your minds? Lacerating yourself all day and night, worrying, and you love the worries. Now, I want to tell you something that you don't know and that you won't understand when I tell you, but it's a fact, and you can know it. You can live without the false pleasure of anger. You can truly live without the false pleasure of being depressed. How about the word confusion? You're confused, are you not? The smallest thing can upset you. See, you're living from feelings. And you hope that the feelings are going to buoy you up, hold you up. And the letter comes and the phone call comes or the glance comes from someone else and you're gone. Let me tell you how sad it is for you that you don't have a life of your own. You know how you'd be different if you had a life of your own? You wouldn't live in time, for one thing, as you now do. You wouldn't look forward to all the excitements that you now look forward to. At the same time, fear them because you kind of sense that there's something more than a timeline. Examine yourselves even as I'm talking to you now, as we're communicating in a certain way. Examine yourselves and see what you have and what you are. Now, I'll tell you for about the fourth time already that if you want something different, then you're going to have to have something that is different from you, from what you call your kind of life. You can't keep driving recklessly down that highway the way you're going now and loving the accidents. Did it ever occur to you that you even love the accidents you have along the inner highway? Give you an excuse to get angry at someone who didn't fix the road the way you wanted it, or didn't cause the road to bend the way you want it to bend, so you can lash out at someone. And we might pause just there a little bit and you examine, what's this compulsive need you have to have enemies? Come on, let's look at it. How about just today? The thoughts and feelings that went through you against that person, against that organization, against someone who seems to be threatening you, someone who makes demands on you. What What is this compulsion you have to keep thinking about him, thinking about her, running it over and over and over in your mind? Ladies and gentlemen, that is called deliberate self-torment. You know, the marvel of the inner adventure, which we're exploring here, is for you to take one little fact, like the one I just presented, about needing to have enemies, needing to complain, to take just one of those and make one small attempt to understand it and to work with it. So that maybe tomorrow, or maybe the next day, you'll be going about your business, and for the first time in your life, you'll see what I just said. That is, you will see that there's something strange inside of you, a shadowy figure inside of you that loves to talk about enemies, that loves to occupy the mind and the emotions, the surging emotions, with thinking about other people, those who hurt you, those who offend you, those who don't compliment you. I want to tell you that you don't begin to know how badly your system operates. But if you see this, if today, tomorrow, you catch yourself right in the middle of a hostile thought, an aggressive feeling, you stand aside and catch yourself right in the middle of it, I'll tell you what that's called. That's called an authentic spiritual experience, which very few human beings ever have.